मृतं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। स्वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानन्द श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृन्द। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। So I'll just share the screen and get started. Okay. So today we'll be discussing from text 6 to 10 of the first chapter. A couple of topics which are covered in these shlokas are bona fide guru and the people in the age of Kali Yuga. Go to the text 6. Rishaya uchu vaya khalo puranani setihasani chanaga akyatani api adhitani dharma shastrani yani utam. The sages said, respected Sutta Goswami, you are completely free from all vices. You are well versed in all scriptures, famous for religious life, and the Puranas and the histories as well. For you have gone through them under proper guidance and have also experienced them. So it's etiquette whenever we actually have some saintly person who's inquired upon or whose question about the absolute truth or the subject matter of the scriptures, there should be first glorification of that person. So here the sages of Naimisharanya, they are following the etiquette and they are glorifying Sutta Goswami. Before putting questions forth, they are actually glorifying him. So, and that glorification is not false glorification. The glorification is actually the qualifications of that personality. So what are the qualifications? The first and foremost qualification of a guru or a bona fide spiritual master is he must be free from all kinds of vices. There are, many categories of vices, but Rupa Goswami categorized them in 6 different ways. Vacho vegam, manasa krodha vegam, jibha vegam, udaropastha vegam, etan vegam yo vishveta vega, sarvam api mam prithvim sashishya. Rupa Goswami says in Upadeshamrit that there are 6 kinds of forces that are considered the vices. Vacho vegam, the inclination to indulge in useless talks. That's wise. Vacho vegam, manasa, mind diverted here and there and thinking about the enjoyment, which is forbidden in the scriptures. Vacho vegam, manasa, krodha vegam, anger, the force of anger. Jibha, the tongue, is always eager to taste different kinds of foodstuffs. Udara, belly, is always eager to fill. Upastha means the genitals. They are always eager to have some sensation. So these are 6 forces which actually make a person practically more or less everyone in this world is controlled by these 6 urges. And that results in many, many vices, which are mainly categorized in 4 vices: eating, gambling, intoxication, and illicit sex. These are the 4 vices which result from the sinful inclinations or sinful tendencies. So a bona fide guru must be free from these vices. But that's not enough. A person who is free from vices is good, but at the same time, he cannot become guru until unless he is well versed in the revealed scriptures, especially Vedas or Vedic scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam. So a person must be well versed in the sense that he can present the subject matter in a very appealing way, in a way that people can understand, appreciate, and practice in their lives. That's the meaning of being well versed. Well versed doesn't mean a person simply remembers everything from the scriptures and through a lecture vomit everything out at people. No, that's not the meaning of being well versed in the revealed scriptures. Well versed in the revealed scriptures means a person knows scriptural injunctions, what is important, what is one can be lenient with. At the same time, he can teach those principles from the scriptures in a very relevant, practical way where people can actually start practicing those principles in life with inspiration from it. That's the meaning of well versed in the scriptures. And also, the spiritual master must be well acquainted with all literatures. What is the meaning of well acquainted means? It means that he knows the essence of all the scriptures and taking a reference from different scriptures, he can establish the essence of all the scriptures. So that means to hear and explain them is very, very important than just reading them. If a person reads a lot of scriptures without its utility, without its proper understanding and extracting essence from it, then that person is no better than a washerman's donkey. You see, there is a very little difference between a so-called learned man and a washerman's donkey. A washerman's donkey carries so much load. Especially in villages in India, they use the donkey. So donkey is loaded with so much burden. And none of that burden belongs to donkey. But donkey thinks, if I don't carry this burden, I will not get anything to eat. Whereas the fact is, a donkey can go anywhere in the village and find grass, ample of grass to eat. So donkey doesn't need to work very hard. The donkey thinks, if I don't work hard, then I won't get to eat. Similarly, a person who simply reads the scriptures. So donkey is carrying so much load on his back for no reason. Similarly, a so-called learned man who does not understand the essence of scriptures, simply reads more and more scriptures, is equivalent to donkey because he carries so much burden of scriptural knowledge without its utility. He has so much burden on his intelligence, on his mind, but he has no utility of that knowledge. So therefore, such a person is no better than a washerman's donkey. But the bona fide guru is actually well versed, well acquainted with the scriptures, and he can explain them in a way that people can take inspiration and practice those in their lives. So only one who has properly grasped the transcendental knowledge from the right source by submissive hearing can properly explain the subject matter. So this is so crucial. Until a person is connected with a bona fide guru and has understood the subject matter by hearing, has understood the subject matter from bona fide guru, the person will not be competent to explain the subject matter to others. Now, text 7 and 8. Yani Veda Vidam Shreshto Bhagavan Badarayana Annecha Munaya Suta Paravara Vido Vidhu Vaitapam Samya Tat Sarvam Tatvatastad Anugraha Bhruyasnigdasya Shishyasya Guravo Guhyam Utapi Utam. Being the eldest learned Vedantist, O Suta Goswami, you are acquainted with the knowledge of Vyasadeva, who is the incarnation of Godhead. And you also know other sages who are fully versed in all kinds of physical and metaphysical knowledge. And because you are submissive, your spiritual masters have endowed you with all the favors bestowed upon a gentle disciple. Therefore, you can tell us all that you have scientifically learned from them. So, here, few important qualifications are being mentioned. So, Suta Goswami is actually a true representative of Vyasadeva. He is true representative of Vyasadeva because he learned the knowledge in parampara from Vyasadeva. So what he is about to describe, what Suta Goswami is about to describe in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam, he learned from Shukadeva Goswami, who had directly learned from Vyasadeva. So he is truly a representative of Vyasadeva, and this Srimad Bhagavatam is.
Oh, I think I need to go pick up the
Yeah,
shorts.
that's what I was going to say.
That's okay. You can
Yes,
No, go today.
So Srimad Bhagavatam is a natural commentation on Brahma Sutra. It's considered natural commentary because Brahma Sutras are written by Vyasadeva, and Srimad Bhagavatam, which actually explains the Brahma Sutra subject matter, is also compiled by Vyasadeva. So, since Brahma Sutras are compiled by Vyasadeva, and the explanation of Brahma Sutra, which is there in Srimad Bhagavatam, is also compiled by Srila Vyasadeva. So therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam is called a natural commentation on Brahma Sutras, because it's coming from the original author of Vedanta Sutra. There are 6 different philosophical systems. Now, of course, nowadays you don't get to hear all these 6 systems, but these are mainly Gautam, Kanad, Kapila, Patanjali, Jaimini, and Ashtavakra, I believe. So these are the 6 different systems of philosophy. And more or less, all these 6 systems of philosophy are atheistic. And of course, we won't go into detail, but in brief, these 6 systems of philosophy are the study of the material creation, the study of this whole cosmos, or the study of the material nature from different stages or different angles. Like, for example, Kanada. What is Kanada's philosophy? Kanada's philosophy is this whole creation is actually made of prana, atoms. So Kanada actually explains that this whole creation is nothing but the combination of atoms, and at certain stage, the different atoms combine to form a living entity. Does not recognize anything in relationship to the demigods, in relationship to absolute truth, in relationship to soul. So for him, this whole body, this whole creation is nothing but combination of atoms, which is true. So he's not able to see beyond the atoms. Similarly, Kapila, he goes a little more deeper. He says, okay, these are atoms, but atoms are not everything. The atoms actually form different elements. You know, there are 25 or 24 different elements this material world is composed of. So Kapila goes into analyzing those 24 elements. So again, there's no concept of soul, there's no concept of God. He's only talking about elements. So Gautam, Kanad, Kapila, they are all talking about the atheistic form, you know, no recognition of soul or God. There is some vague concept, but they don't really focus on soul or God or demigods. And Patanjali, Jaimini, Patanjali goes a little, you know, further. Jaimini, Ashtavakra, they all go into little deeper, but none of them have clear understanding about who we are, why we are here in this material world, what is the purpose of this material existence, how to get out of this material existence. Nobody is able to give a clear understanding. But above these 6 systems of philosophy is Vyasadev's philosophy of Brahma Sutras, and sort of Vedanta Sutras. So one who is fully conversant of these 6 systems of philosophy and can defeat these systems of philosophy and present a theistic view, establish a theistic view, and God ultimately is the source and ultimate cause of everything. That person is fit to sit on Vyasa. So, a guru means a person who can actually annihilate all these different philosophical systems. You see, especially Kanad and Kapila's philosophy is very much similar to modern scientific theories. Kanad especially talks about atoms. So, modern atomic theory is more or less stolen from the philosophy of Kanad and Kapila. So, whenever any scientific, any person from scientific circles came to confront Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada would simply annihilate all their arguments in a very simple and profound way, which would make even all the big learned scientists and philosophers speechless. So, for example, many times some scientists would come and they would discuss it. And scientists mean they were actually very learned. They were from having some big degrees from different universities. They were professors. They had PhDs, and they were doing a lot of research. They would come and say, "Oh, all the chemicals are the combination of the chemicals is the source of life." But I said, okay, if I give you all those chemicals, can you create life? And then it would say no. I said, then what kind of scientist you are? You are saying the life came from chemicals. I'm telling you, I'll give you all the chemicals. Can you produce one life? Forget about complicated life of human being. Can you create one just blade of grass? And they would say no. I said, actually, one time, Prabhupada would actually very often have conversation with his disciples. So one of the disciples would play the role of a scientist and give all kinds of hard arguments. Sometimes, some of the disciples says, but we have actually, advanced so much. We through chemicals can create, so many wonderful things. So say, can you create a small egg? But we know all the chemicals in the egg. That is all right, but can you create one egg? I'll give you all the chemicals. And then the disciple finally would say, no, I cannot. Producing eggs. Even without much knowledge of the chicken is producing eggs. So, in this way, Srila Prabhupada would actually annihilate any kind of philosophy. Any circles, people, when they came to discuss with Prabhupada, Prabhupada could actually annihilate all their arguments within fractions. Not take a long time for Prabhupada to annihilate any kind of arguments. So this is one of the important qualifications of spiritual master. Srila Sudha Goswami was a proper teacher, and therefore the sages at Naimisharanya, they actually elevated him to Vyasasana. The Sudha Goswami would not only teach properly, but he would follow also properly. That's a proper teacher. Teacher does not mean who simply speaks or tells others what to do, but who teaches by his own example. Apana acharite. Prabhu Jivarasika. Just like Lord Chaitanya, he would teach all the living entities by his own examples. So similarly, a teacher or a bona fide acharya, he teaches by his own example. So the success in a disciple's life is very much relies on these blessings from the spiritual master. When a disciple is blessed by the spiritual master, that brings all spiritual success in the life of the disciple. So this is one of the very important factor in the spiritual life. The secret of success in the spiritual life is in satisfying the spiritual master and thereby getting his sincere blessings. Because when the spiritual master blesses the disciple, then the disciple actually becomes completely purified from all the anarthas and can relate all the teachings from the spiritual master to others. And this is actually a very famous quote by Srila Srila Thakur. There is one stanza that we sing every day in the Guru Puja. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado yasya aprasadat nagati kutopi dhayam stans asya shastri sandhya vande guru shri charanarvindam. So we sing this every day in the morning in Mangalarti. Yes, yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado. By the mercy of spiritual master, or by satisfying spiritual master, one can satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And yasya aprasada nagati gutam. When the spiritual master is dissatisfied, there is only havoc on the path of spiritual realization. Yasya aprasada nagati kutopi. One cannot attain gati or some better destination if one does dissatisfies the Guru. It is essential, therefore, that a disciple be very much obedient and submissive to the bona fide spiritual master. Because without the mercy of spiritual master, one cannot expect any good future or better destination in spiritual life. We go to the next, text number 9. Tatragyasa yushman bhavata yad vinishchitam Pumsam ekantata shreyas tanna shamsitam arhasi. Please, therefore, being blessed with many ears, explain to us in an easily understandable way what you have ascertained to be the absolute and ultimate good for people in general. So this is the first question. As we discussed last time, the sages of Naimisharanya will be asking 6 different questions on Suta Goswami. So here, the first question is being put forward. They are asking, being blessed with many, explain us in easily understandable way what you have ascertained to be the absolute and ultimate good for people in general. This is the first question. So we'll keep a track because this is very relevant. They are asking certain questions. Total 6 questions will be asked by the sages of Naimisharanya from Suta Goswami. And we'll see from 2nd chapter onwards, Suta Goswami actually begins replying all these 6 questions. And the entire first canto is nothing but answer to these 6 questions. Please make a note of it. This is the first question. Okay. So, in Bhagavad Gita, it is recommended that one should worship the Acharya. Acharya Upasanam is recommended in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says in 13th chapter, Acharya Upasanam Chautam. One should, there are 20 principles which are actually very favorable. And one of them is Acharya Upasana. So Acharyas or Goswamis are always absorbed in thought of the well-being of people in general, especially their spiritual well-being. That's the meaning of an Acharya or a Goswami. Acharya or Goswami is not interested in so Suta Acharya or Goswami, they are actually very much concerned about people's spiritual welfare. And one may think, well, what about the material well-being? What about their financial well-being? What about their health well-being? All the material well-being automatically follows. When the spiritual well-being is taken care of, all the material well-being automatically follows. So therefore, the true sages or saintly persons or Vaishnava Acharyas, they do not waste their time and energy in creating some facility or creating some effort to create some material or physical well-being. They all focus their energy on spiritual well-being. Remember, once His Holiness Radha Swami Maharaj was telling that he was coming back from Vrindavan to Mumbai. So after Vrindavan Yatra, he went to Delhi. From Delhi, he was supposed to catch a flight. So he was waiting on the airport, Delhi airport, to take the flight to Mumbai. But somehow this flight was delayed. He was just waiting and waiting on. And one person walked up to him and he said, the Minister of the Environment, she wants to speak to you. Is that okay? And Maharaj said, well, yes, perfectly fine. So this lady actually walked up to Radha Swami Maharaj. And she started challenging. She said, you Swamis. She didn't ask only Maharaj, but she said, all you Swamis, or the so-called leaders of the spiritual societies, what you all are doing for the environment. And she further went on explaining. She said, we are working very hard to create rules and regulations and make sure that people follow those rules and regulations to have the safe environment, so that, because all of us, we have to breathe air, so we need pure air, we need pure water. Now the land is polluted, the water is polluted, the air is polluted, everything is being polluted. So we are working to restore that back by laws and by aligning with politicians, by creating law and regulations, enforcing those laws. But what you people are doing? Don't you think that you people have some responsibility as well to work for environment? And Maharaj, I feel you very beautiful reply. He said, well, what you say is correct. We all are dependent on the atmosphere, environment. Yes, I also need to breathe. So I also need the air. Not only you need the pure air, I also need the air to breathe. I need water to drink, just as you need. And it's a very good thing that you are working hard. You're trying to set up the laws and rules, and make sure that everybody follows those laws and rules. And I said, but you are working, and our working is actually for the same cause. You are trying to enforce the laws. You're trying to create the law and enforce the laws by creating penalties and punishment if somebody violates the laws, which is good. But we are dealing with directly curing the root cause. The root cause of all the environmental pollution is the pollution within the heart. How? For example, an industrialist pollutes the atmosphere. He may bribe the politicians to set the law in their favor. And he simply wants to exploit the nature. He wants to exploit the environment, pollute the environment, pollute the rivers by dumping so much waste, industrial waste in the rivers, by releasing so many industrial gases, harmful gases in atmosphere. So yes, you can create laws, enforce them, but people always want to find some loopholes. You set the law, they will try to find some loophole in the law so that they can get away with it. But we are trying to deal with directly the root cause. The root cause is the pollution of the heart. The industrialist thinking, if I have more by exploiting nature, by exploiting others, if I can accumulate more and more, then I'll be happy. And we're educating people. It's not by having more that you become happy. We make people understand that greed is not in your favor. It's actually true. So, dealing the problem, the root cause, not the superficial cause. Superficial causes, the laws are not set properly, the industrialists are driving the politicians, and politicians are also greedy because they want to, take bribe and set the laws because they know that they are only there 4 or 5 years in power, and after that they won't have anything. In this way, the politicians are greedy, the industrialists are greedy, the government agencies who actually set the laws, they are greedy, so they take bribes and set the laws in the favor of industrialists. But if you train the industrialists, if you make them understand that eventually you have to leave everything behind, and just because you have more money doesn't mean you can eat more. You can still eat only 2 sandwiches in the breakfast. You can't eat more than that. So, if you train the people in spiritual well-being, material well-being will automatically follow. You don't have to put a separate endeavor for that. And foreseeing the incompetencies of people is either Kali. It is also called the either iron or either coral and hypocrisy. Sages, when they saw the incompetency of people in general, they are requesting Sridhar Goswami to give a summary of all the real scriptures, because people in this age, they are actually condemned in so many ways. So now, how the people in this age are condemned is being explained here. प्रायिण अल्पायुषं सद्भ्यो फलवस्मिन् युगे जना मंदासुमंदमतयो मंदभाग्या युगधृता. O learned one, in this age of Kali, men have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. So this is actually, in one way, the characteristics of the people in age of Kali is described. So prayana alpa ayusha. The first and foremost thing is, people in this age of Kali are short-lived. The people in general, they are not very much intelligent. But the devotees of the Lord, they are always anxious to uplift people in general and do some good to people in general. Do some good not by some material means, but to spiritually improve the people's status in the spiritual life. Because spiritual improvement or improving one's consciousness in a spiritual way is the real improvement. Because most of the population in this area of Kali is short-lived. People don't have very long duration of life. Alpa ayusha. Alpa ayu means alpa means very little and ayu means age. So people in this age of Kali are alpa ayusha. They are short-lived. And people in this are also very lazy. Sometimes we may think, oh, I don't see people are lazy. People are actually much, much more active. But this lazy doesn't mean physically lazy. But people in this age are spiritually lazy. In the matter of self-realization, they are lazy. They may be working very hard. People sometimes, I know many of the people who work very long hours. Actually, working at, people who are working in India, they work very long hours. So, people in this age are very lazy in terms of self-realization. If you ask a person to work in the office for 10, 12 or 14 hours or even 16 hours, they will work. But you tell people to come and attain some discussion on Bhagavad Gita or discourse on Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, they will flatly refuse. People have absolutely no interest in spirituality. When it comes to subject matter of spirituality, they are so lazy. They don't want to discuss anything about it. Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur gives a very nice example of this. He says, one time, a king, he wanted to find out the most lazy person in his kingdom. So he asked his minister, and ministers were very intelligent, so they arranged. They said, we'll find a lazy person for you. So they arranged a big pandal, and they announced in the kingdom, whoever is lazy, doesn't want to work, can simply come to this pandal and eat all the 3 meals in a day. Will not be charged anything, doesn't have to pay anything. And after eating, we have facility in the tent only to lie down if you want to sleep. You can spend your whole life in this way. Whoever is most lazy is more than welcome. So many people actually came. Because they saw, oh, really we are going to eat. And we don't have to work at all. That's such a wonderful opportunity. So, many people came. The whole pandal was full of people. They were eating, and after eating, they would go to another pandal and sleep. So when people went to sleep, the minister told the king, now let's put the tent in which people are sleeping. Let's put that tent to fire. So they set the tent on the fire, and people were sleeping inside the tent. They immediately got alarmed. They ran away. They ran out to save their lives. Practically everyone left, except the two people. The two people who were lying there, they did not get up. They continued to lie down. And they were lying down with closed eyes like that. So they can't see the fire, but they can feel the fire. So the person is sleeping like this, and he's feeling too much hot. He's telling his friend, his fellow being, my dear brother, I'm feeling too much heat. The other says, where are you feeling heat? Heat on my face. Okay. The person said, then turn your back to that side where you're feeling the heat. The person turns his back. And after some time, the other person says, I'm feeling too much heat. Where you are feeling heat? I'm feeling too much heat on the back. Okay, so then turn your face that side. So after some time, say again, I'm feeling heat on the face. Okay, then turn your back that side. And after some time, say, I'm feeling heat on the back. Turn your face that side. So if there is too much heat on the face side, I'll turn my back there. If there's too much heat on the back, I'll turn my face there. Again, too much heat on the face, I'll turn back there. So I will keep turning face back, but I won't get up and run away out of the situation. I want to continue lying down. I'm so lazy. I don't want to move. I will continue to suffer the blazing fire. So this is the meaning of lazy. So minister told me, these two people are too lazy. So in the age of Kali, people are lazy spiritually. They may be suffering in so many ways. They're suffering at the office, suffering at the social setting, now suffering of corona, suffering of no job, suffering of protest. So many calamities come, but the people still have no interest in inquiring about, is there a way I can get out of this world and get out of this material existence? People are not interested. That's a sign of laziness. So in Kali Yuga, the whole atmosphere is actually surcharged. That laziness, manda, sumanda matayo, and people are also faithless. Not only they're lazy, but they're also faithless. Faithless in the sense, if you tell somebody quoting from Bhagavad Gita, say, Bhagavad Gita, what the proof that Bhagavad Gita actually is true? Everything from Bhagavad Gita is true. I don't understand Bhagavad Gita. People have actually so much difficulty in putting faith in you, especially in genuine authority. And people in general are no longer interested in spiritual values. Sense gratification is now the standard of civilization. When you say sense gratification, standard of civilization means you see any city, any town, especially if you take in the United States, any city or town will have every facility for sense enjoyment, but they will have absolutely no facility for spiritual upliftment. So this is the unfortunate situation in the modern age of Kali Yuga. People have no interest in spiritual values. They have immense interest in sense gratification, but no interest in spirituality. And last but not the least, the sages of Naimisharanya are anxious to disentangle all fallen souls. And here they are seeking the remedy from Sutta Goswami. So they are anxious that how people in this age will be actually liberated, how they will actually get out of this miserable existence. That's the nature of saintly persons. So all the sages of Naimisharanya, being saintly by him, that they are actually inquiring in this way. But the greatest fortune of the people of Kali Yuga, though we read so many misfortunes or unfortunate condition of people in Kali Yuga, people in Kali Yuga still have one greatest fortune, and that is simply by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Go back home, back to God. We can attain perfection of life simply by chanting Hare Krishna. So I think with this, we will stop today's discussion. This is almost 6:25 now. Okay, so if anyone has any questions, you may ask.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Pranam. Chitarani Devidasi.
Hare Krishna.
In text 5 Prabhuji, in the purport, there is a sentence like here. I could not understand that sentence Prabhuji. I will read this. Shri Vyasadeva impregnated the message of Bhagavatam onto Srila Sukadeva Goswami. Like here, impregnated means Prabhuji.
Impregnated means he gave the knowledge of Bhagavatam to Shukadeva Goswami.
Okay.
He
So
taught
when he... Sorry, go ahead.
He taught him. That's the meaning. That he taught him the Srimad Bhagavatam, message of Srimad Bhagavatam.
So when he gave message like he is in the womb, he learned the Bhagavatam or after coming out?
No, after coming out from the womb, Shukadeva Goswami started walking away from his father. He had no interest in living in home. So as soon as he was born as a 16-year-old boy. So he just walked away from the home. He had nothing to do with his father. Therefore, Bhagavatam describes in the previous, and then the coming chapters you will be reading, that as soon as Shukadeva Goswami was born, he started walking away, and Vyasadeva was running behind him. My dear son, stop! My dear son, stop! Because Vyasadeva wanted to perform Jata Karma and other rituals after the child is born. Shukadeva Goswami had absolutely no interest in all of that. So he was walking away. Then Vyasadeva understood that, oh, he is a Brahman realized soul. It will be not possible for me to keep him at home. So he actually taught a couple of verses from Srimad Bhagavatam to his disciples, and he told them to go and recite in front of Shukadeva Goswami. So as soon as Shukadeva Goswami heard those two verses, immediately became eager to hear more, because those two verses were mainly glorification of Krishna from Srimad Bhagavatam. As soon as he heard it, he became eager to learn more and more. So they brought him to Vyasadeva, and Vyasadeva actually started teaching him Srimad Bhagavatam.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.